Morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock, and I'm calling the hearing examiner agenda and hearings to order. Today's Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. We're here in council chambers, as I've already mentioned, for the hearing examiner hearings. Before we start the hearings proper, I have some preliminary comments to make. The process that's followed in the city of Cape Coral is a little bit different than the process followed in other jurisdictions. And if you've not been here before, I'd like to introduce you to our process. In our process, the clerk reads the introduction to the case, and then the clerk will swear in anyone who is testifying as to that case. City staff goes first and testifies regarding compliance with public notice. If public notice is found to have been properly accomplished, we go forward with the hearing. If not, the hearing does not go forward. The applicant goes first, is required to present an entire case. The city staff goes second and presents their case. Public comment is next. Please, if you're here for public comment, make your comments comprehensive, because once public comment is closed, it will not be reopened. Following the closure of public comment, the applicant responds to questions, makes any final comments, staff does the same, and then the hearing is concluded. If you have a cell phone with you, please turn it off or silence and take any cell phone conversations outside the room if possible. And if you wish to have private conversations, please move away from the speaker's lectern. We have two of them today, so that we do not accidentally record your conversations. Once recorded, your conversation becomes public record. If you have comments to make, please come to the microphone so we can properly record your testimony. No testimony will be accepted from your seat. All testimony must be under oath. If you're here for public comment, we do request that you utilize the podium, which is at my left, your right. It has full audio and video capability. It just will give you a little bit extra security in these troubled times of illness, etc. Anyone who provides testimony other than the applicant or the applicant's representatives and staff is requested to fill out a public participation card, and that's so we can properly spell your name for the record. If you wish to have a copy of the hearing examiner recommendation or order, as the case may be, feel free, please, to provide your email address. However, once you provide your email address, please be aware of the fact that that also becomes a public record. With those preliminary comments, I'm going to turn it over to our clerk to call the first case. Thank you, everyone.
-000030, address 5646 Riverside Drive, applicant Brian and Kristen Haig. The petitioner is requesting a plat vacation of a property with single-family residential R1 zoning at 5646 Riverside Drive. A single-family house was recently demolished on this site. The site abuts the Lucerne Canal to the west. The owners are requesting to vacate 309 square feet of unexcavated canal right-of-way and 521 square feet of platted easements along the west property line. These vacations are requested to provide the owners with flexibility in constructing a new single-family house. The right-of-way requested to be vacated has no value to the city. The city will retain easements sufficient for maintaining a continuous perimeter easement around the site. This request, if approved, will have no adverse effect on boater navigability or safety in the Lucerne Canal. Any persons giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, Mr. Struve.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Mike Struve, Planning Team Coordinator with the City Planning Division. Staff did advertise this case, and that included sending out letters to all surrounding property owners within 500 feet of the site, posting a sign on the property, and then placing an ad in the news press 10 days in advance of this hearing date.
I will find the proper notice was given. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. May we have the applicant up, please? Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Haig.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. We may have a slight problem. I don't know because I haven't run into this before. We threw a mix-up with Kelly and I don't have a hard copy of the presentation. Will I need that? Do we need to continue?
You can read whatever you'd like to read, sure.
Well, I can talk about, I can read, and I can read off of Kelly's phone, so I don't have anything I can put up on the
That's fine.
display. Okay. As is typical, and we've discussed many times before, there is a small sliver of land that exists between the rear property line and the actual seawall on this property that we have come to request the city vacate. I think as Mr. Struve alluded to, we have done the proper notification, or the city's done the proper notification. We have letters of no objection from the utility companies, and so we are requesting that the city vacate this parcel so we can build a new single-family home, and it will give us our setbacks as measured to the seawall rather than the current property line.
Okay, and when you say the vacation, you're talking about the portion of the right-of-way and
Yes.
the easements? Right,
Normally I get to read that from the hard copy, but I don't have that memorized, yes.
That's okay. And have you had an opportunity to review the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Do you wish to incorporate into your presentation today?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. No questions, thank you.
Good morning again, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Mike Struve, Planning Team Coordinator with the Planning Division. For the purposes of this hearing this morning, I would like to be, or I'm requesting to be recognized as an expert in the area of land use planning based on my credentials on file with the City Clerk's office and my past testimony before you previously on similar matters.
Thank you. I will find you as an expert for purposes of the issues before us today based upon your CV, which is a record with the hearing examiner, with the city clerk, and also based upon your testimony in prior hearing examiner hearings on issues that are similar to those in this hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you. So this case is a privately initiated vacation case. The owners are Brian and Kristen Haig. You already heard from Brian Haig on this case. The owners are requesting to vacate 309 square feet of canal right-of-way associated with the Lucerne Canal and 521 square feet of platted easements, which are on the applicant's site, and more particularly on lots 15 and 16 within Block 5. This property is at 5646 Riverside Drive. This is an aerial map showing the site and surrounding properties. And I do want to make a correction here, or clarify something that needs to be corrected in the staff report. We had reported in our staff report that there was a single-family home that had been demolished on the site. That was based on a misreading I had of the applicant's survey. I had gone out and visited the site late last week, I believe last Thursday. Clearly there's a single-family home on the site. Also noticed the sign posted near their mailbox. So just wanted to clarify that for the record, since when Thursday came around, it was too late, obviously, to correct the staff report or resubmit it.
Thank you. I appreciate that update. Thank you.
This property is located in the extreme southeast corner of the city of Cape Coral, and you'll notice that this being one of the older residential areas of the city, this area is largely built out with single-family homes. This property is as well as all surrounding sites, have a single-family future land use classification, single-family zoning. The site currently has an area of over 10,800 square feet. Besides the single-family home, other improvements on the site include a seawall and a concrete dock. And there is an uneven strip of unexcavated canal right-of-way that exists to the rear or along the west property line of the site that runs north to south, and that's the right-of-way area that the applicants are requesting to vacate. These next couple of slides show portions of sketches that were submitted by the applicants that we have clipped and then have highlighted in red just so it's more apparent which areas are being requested to be vacated. This is the right-of-way area. So this is area here between the seawall and the applicant's rear property line, about 309 feet that the applicant is requesting to vacate. And this shows the existing platted easement along the west or rear property line that the applicant is requesting to vacate. And the area of this easement proposed to be vacated is around 521 feet.
You mind if I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Can you explain the discrepancy between the 309 square feet and the 521 square feet?
Sure.
Thank you.
So looking at the right-of-way area here that's being requested to be vacated, you'll notice that it is not uniformly wide. And if you start at the north end of the right-of-way area, it's somewhere about a foot or so in width and tapers down or tapers more broadly near the south end to around 6 feet wide. So that distance, if you were to do the math, and that was done by the surveyor, fortunately for us, it's 309 feet. If you look at the platted easements are uniformly 6 feet wide around the entire site. And so in this case, the area is just larger to begin with because the width of the area being vacated generally is wider throughout.
Do you think that the configuration of the right-of-way, that the discrepancy there is because the way the Lucerne Canal was dug out originally, or? I know I'm asking you to speculate. So.
That would be my speculation, too. And the right-of-way area, my experience has been the right-of-way areas that I have reviewed and have been a part of in terms of presenting cases previously. Oftentimes, they are somewhat similar along the width of the area being right-of-way, along the area of the property line. But in some cases, they are not uniform in width. And this one, certainly, it's more obvious in this case where there is a clear distinction in the width from the north to the south.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting you.
In terms of the minimum standards, staff finds the owners are eligible to file this vacation request as the owners have demonstrated ownership of the site next to the area proposed to be vacated. They've provided letters of no objection from the utility providers, and they provided sketches and legal descriptions that staff has reviewed and found to be sufficient for describing the areas to be vacated. Staff has analyzed this request with those standards that appear for vacations, and those appear in the Land Development Code section 3.4.5. The first standard is whether the plat easements or rights of way are required by the city for any future transportation, access, water management, or any other public purpose. Again, the right-of-way area in this case is narrow, has a small area. It is disconnected from other similar right-of-way areas. This right-of-way area, in our view, does not have any foreseeable value to the city. On the other hand, it does have some value, obviously, to the applicant in terms it could be used to help enlarge their site. Not all of the platted easements are needed. Neither the easements associated with the vacated right-of-way area or the platted easements. That being said, the city will retain easements that will be sufficient for maintaining a 6-foot wide perimeter easement along the new west property line of the site. Second standard is whether any required easements are necessary to accommodate the vacation of any plat easement or right-of-way. New easements are not needed. We're not asking the applicant to deed new easements to the city, but the city will be retaining easements as mentioned earlier. 3, are alternative routes required or available that do not cause adverse impacts to surrounding areas? The answer to that is no. You would normally, or you might associate that more with the vacation of an alley or even part of a street right-of-way. In this case, alternative routes are not needed, as the vacation will not result in either the filling in, closure, or restriction of the canal. Fourth, if the closure, or will the closure of a right-of-way negatively affect areas utilized for vehicles to turn around and exit an area? And again, the answer to that is no. The actual portion of the canal that has water in it will not be restricted or filled in or altered in any way, so it will not affect over maneuverability or navigability. And then 5, whether local utility providers have given consent to the vacation of the plat, easements, or rights-of-way. The answer to this is yes. All utility providers have issued letters of no objection. LCEC does require a 6-foot wide easement around the expanded site, and that will be provided. That is a staff condition, recommended staff condition of approval that I'll go over in a second. In terms of comprehensive plan policy, this request is consistent with policy 1.15 of the future land use element, which provides or states that properties with R1 zoning are consistent with the single-family future land use classification, and in addition to that, establishes maximum densities for the single-family residential future land use classification. And following this vacation, assuming it is approved, the site will have an area of 11,155 square feet, more or less, and the site would have a density of 3.9 dwelling units per acre, which is less than the maximum allowed for this future land use classification, which is 4.4 dwelling units per acre. Staff does recommend approval of this vacation with conditions. We have received 2 phone calls from nearby property owners just wanting more information about this case, indicating neither support nor opposition. And if you'd like, I'll go ahead and read these
Yes, please.
staff conditions into the record. The first is the vacation of the 309 square feet of right-of-way adjacent to lots 15 and 16, Block 5, Unit 1, Part 1, or Unit 1, Part 2, Cape Coral subdivision, shall be consistent with that shown in the sketch and accompanying legal description prepared by Ardura, entitled Subject Parcel, dated March 4th, 2022, that appears in Exhibit A. 2, the vacation of 521 square feet of platted easements in lots 15 and 16, Block 5, Unit 1, Part 2, Cape Coral subdivision, shall be consistent with that shown in the sketch and accompanying legal description prepared by Ardura, entitled Subject Parcel 5-PUE-V, dated March 4th, 2022, that appears in Exhibit B. 3, the city shall retain easements sufficient for maintaining a minimum 6-foot wide public utility and drainage easement coincident with the perimeter of the expanded parcel, consistent with that shown in the sketch and accompanying legal description prepared by Ardura, entitled Subject Parcel 5-PUE, dated March 4th, 2022, that appears in Exhibit C. 5, the petitioners shall reimburse the City of Cape Coral the cost of recording this resolution with the Office of the Lake County Clerk of Court. And then 5, the city shall record this resolution with the Office of the Lake County Clerk of Court following the receipt of the recording fees from the petitioners. I would like to request that our staff report be incorporated into our presentation this morning with the correction I mentioned earlier with the single-family home being present on the site.
Thank you. I will do so with the correction or the modification that you've indicated previously. I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to provide input or testimony? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section of the public hearing, bring it back to the applicant. You've had an opportunity to listen to Mr. Struve's testimony. Do you agree with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you wish to incorporate it into your presentation today?
I do.
Okay, and do you agree to the conditions?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I have
Thank
no
you.
other questions. Thank you. Mr. Struve, anything else?
I have nothing else except to say that I do have a hard copy of the exhibits that I will give to you immediately following this hearing this morning.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I will recommend that the vacation go forward as requested by the applicant, and I will try to get the recommendation out as quickly as possible. Mr. Hague, I know time is money, and I understand that, so I'll do the best I can. Thank you very much. Closing this hearing and moving on to hearing number B. Thank you.
Case VAC 22-00028, address 329 Del Prado Boulevard North, applicant Del Prado N 329 LLC. The petitioner is requesting a vacation of 888 square feet of platted public utility and drainage easements, PUEs, in Block 1546, Unit 17, located at 329 Del Prado Boulevard North. The easements proposed to be vacated are internal to a collection of properties that have been assembled for commercial development. The approval of this petition will increase the development potential of this property. No additional easements are needed. Any person giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Patrick Carlton White, Senior Planner, City of Cape Coral's Planning Department. At this point, I would like to acknowledge for the record this case has been advertised in accordance with city policy, including placing signs on the property, mailing any property owner within 500 feet, and placing an ad in the news press 10 days prior to hearing.
Thank you. I will find the proper public notice was given.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all I need right now. I'll have a seat.
Thank you very much. When we have the applicant's representative up, please, thank you.
Go ahead and double click there. Double click. Yeah, I got you.
And up and down.
You can use up and down. There's a little remote right there on the right if you underneath those papers. Or just go left and right, however you'd like to do it.
Okay, left and right. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. I am Ken Weiner for the record. With the Weiner Companies, I represent the owner, Del Prado N 329 LLC. We are requesting a vacation of the 6 feet on the east side of lots 4 through 7 of 329 Del Prado Boulevard North, which is comprised of 1.25 acres, which we intend to develop with a medical office building of approximately 7,500 square feet. If we agree that if any utilities are required to be relocated, we will do that are in that easement. We don't believe there are any there based upon our investigation and our discussions with the other utility companies. I think I've been through this slide already, so I will move on to the next one. I apologize. This is an aerial photograph that shows approximately where the property is located at 329 Del Prado Boulevard North. This is another aerial close-up photograph showing where the property is located. The request, once again, is to vacate the easterly 6 feet of lots 4 through 7, Block 1546, Unit 17, Part 1 of Cape Coral. The existing utility easement interferes with the proposed building footers and air conditioning compressor pads. This picture shows a site plan with the building to the southwest. And you can see where those footers would be located there. That's approximately where the easement that we're asking to be vacated is. This is the sketch. You can see the dotted area is the 6-foot easement that we're asking to be vacated. on the east side of lots 4 through 7. This is the legal description for the area that we're asking to be vacated, which is roughly 858 square feet, or roughly 0.02 acres. These are the staff recommendations, which we concur with and will comply with, which include their recommendations, which is that that our vacation will be consistent with the sketch provided by Trask Surveying, that we will pay for the recording of the vacation of the easement, and that we will, let's see, and that the city shall record the resolution. And I've also attached the letters from the utility companies with their consent to the vacation of the easement. That's all I have.
Thank you, I have no questions.
Thank you.
Mr. White, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. Again, for the record, Patrick White, Planning Department. The property is depicted on this aerial here before you. It is just a little to the northeast of the intersection of Del Prado Boulevard and Northeast 3rd Terrace. Mr. Weiner has previously introduced himself as the applicant, Del Prado North 329 LLC. The property is 1.25 acres. It's in the infill service area, and we're looking to vacate about 888 square feet of public utility and drainage easements. The property is displayed on the left in the official zoning map. It is zoned commercial. And on the right, on the future land use map, you can see that it is zoned commercial professional. That commercial professional designation follows along that portion of the block. There's some residential to the east and some corridor to the west. More commercial professionals located to the south. The property is a number of different lots. There are lots 4 through 7 and 56 through 61, all within block 1546. This image depicts the area proposed to be vacated in a light blue. Looks like a dark blue on your screen, but a light blue on mine. To the immediate east of that blue area is a gold-colored area. That's a former alley that was vacated. However, the underlying easements were retained by the city. We are not proposing to do anything with that alley. It's going to stay, it will stay a vacated alley with underlying easements. On the table today is just the request to vacate the area of land in blue. Note that there is a if you follow that blue line immediately to the north and immediately to the south, there is a gap. That gap is where we are not proposing any vacation to allow the 6-foot perimeter public utility easement to be maintained. There are 5 different criteria staff looks at when reviewing a vacation. Question 1, whether the plat easements or right-of-way are required by the city for any future transportation, access, water management, or public utility purposes. Well, these easements will not provide a future transportation, public access, water management, or other foreseeable public benefit. They are internal PUEs. To this assemblage, the city is retaining an existing 6-foot wide perimeter easement to accommodate any future utility installation, maintenance, or drainage functions. Question 2, whether any required easements are necessary to accommodate this vacation. Staff found no new easements are required to accommodate the request. Questions 3, if alternate routes are required or available that do not cause adverse impacts to surrounding areas. Staff found that this vacation does not include any request to vacate an alley or a street right-of-way, or for that matter, a canal right-of-way. This criterion isn't applicable. Question 4, if the closure of a right-of-way negatively affects area utilized for vehicles to turn around and exit an area, similar to 3, this vacation does not include a request to vacate either an alley or street right-of-way, and the criteria is not applicable. Lastly, item 5 is whether local utility providers have provided consent to the vacation of plat, easements, or rights-of-way. The local utility providers may require additional easements or relocation of existing utilities to complete the vacation. Staff found that CenturyLink, Comcast, and LCEC have provided letters of no objection. If any facilities are located within the vacated area, the owner will bear the cost to relocate those. We are not aware of any at this moment. The request is consistent with the future land use policy 1.15. The commercial district is compatible with the commercial professional future land use. The request is consistent with future land use objective 3. Eliminating this internal easement from the middle of the site, which is no longer needed, does improve the development potential of the site. Staff is recommending approval with 3 conditions. Condition 1, that the vacation of the platted easement shall be consistent with that shown in the sketch and accompanying legal description prepared by K.E. Trask, P.A., dated May 20, 2022, entitled Exhibit A. 2, the petitioner shall pay to the City of Cape Coral the cost of recording the resolution with the Office of the Lee County Clerk of Court. 3, the city shall record this resolution with the Office of the Lee County Clerk of Court following the receipt of the recording fees from the petitioner. That concludes staff's presentation. I will stand by for any questions that you have.
No questions, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish to provide input or testimony? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section of the public hearing, bring it back to the applicant. Sir, could I have you back up? Mr. Weiner? You've heard staff's testimony. Do you wish to incorporate it into your presentation as well?
Yes,
Do you have any further testimony, sir?
I do not.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. White, anything further?
I guess I'd like to include my PowerPoint and staff report in my presentation or on the record. You already have them in the record. I'm not sure if I need to do that again, but if it clarifies anything, we're glad to have them there.
Can't do that too often. Our assistant city attorney's already smiling with pleasure at your doing the redundancy, so it's not a problem.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you very much. I will go ahead and recommend the vacation go forward as requested by the applicant's representative. Mr. Weiner, I will try to get the recommendation out as quickly as possible. As I indicated earlier today, time is money. We get that very clearly here in Cape Coral. So thank you for coming today. It was a very nice presentation, by the way. And I'll close the hearing at this time. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we move on to number 3? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Case RZN 22-000014, address, multiple properties. Applicant 3150 Southwest Pine Island LLC. The applicant requests a rezone from agricultural AG2, a Lee County zoning designation, to commercial corridor CC for 4 parcels totaling 15.47 acres. The site is located at the intersection of Veterans Parkway and Pine Island Road. The rezone will allow for commercial, multifamily, or mixed-use development on a site that was recently annexed into Cape Coral. The City of Cape Coral will provide sewer service, while the Greater Pine Island Water Association has the authority to provide water service. Any persons giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, Mr. Boyko.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Chad Boyko, Principal Planner with the City's Planning Division. Before the applicant presents his case, I would like to let you know that the case was properly advertised. We mailed out letters to residents within 500 feet of the property. We posted a sign on the property, and then we also placed an ad in the newspaper of local circulation, and all of this was done 10 days prior to this hearing.
Thank you. We'll find the proper public notice was given. Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Hartzell, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I know that you don't commonly come here, so I had a sort of a preliminary question. Would you feel more comfortable asking questions of your experts or your representatives, or do you want them to testify individually? Doesn't matter to me.
They'll be testifying individually. I'll begin, Lord willing, with our PowerPoint.
We can offer assistance with the technology.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Many people find it complex.
brought my IT guy with me.
I think we just use the arrows that way.
Excellent. Thank you very much. For the record, Madam Hearing Examiner, I'm Steve Hartzell with Pavis Law Firm. I'm here on behalf of the applicants who are owners and contract purchasers of the property. With me today are our team members, Fred Drovlik, Planning Director at RVI Planning, also Daniela Rodriguez, who is the Development Manager at Gilbane Development, Paulette Hansen of Milhoff Aubuchon Realty, and Ted Triesch, who is President of TR Transportation Consultants. Before we get started, I want to take care of perhaps a couple of housekeeping items. First, I'd like to incorporate the staff report into our presentation. It's already been provided to us, and we would like to make that a part of our record as well.
Thank you, so noted.
And I would also like to incorporate our PowerPoint and the exhibits that we have provided ahead of time to the hearing examiner and to the staff as part of our presentation.
I also incorporate, thank you.
Additionally, we have two experts here today, Fred Drovlik with RVI Planning and Ted Triesch. I am not aware that they have testified before you today. Just as kind of a preliminary matter and to get it out of the way, we have provided you with copies of their resumes. What I would like to do is to ask that both of them be qualified as experts in their respective areas of expertise. Mr. Drovlik has for 17 years been a planner and has testified on numerous occasions in numerous jurisdictions, just apparently not before the hearing examiner here. You may be familiar with Mr. Drovlik and his prior expertise. Mr. Triesch has for 25 years been a transportation planner, has testified in Lee County. Both of them have been qualified as experts before the Lee County hearing examiner and in Lee County as well as I'm sure in other jurisdictions. I'm prepared to put them on and to provide their qualifications with testimony, but we would ask that they both be qualified as experts, Mr. Triesch as an expert in transportation planning, and Mr. Drovlik as an expert in land use and development planning.
I have had an opportunity to review their CVs, and yes, Mr. Drovlik, I'm very well aware from my 30 years in government service in a variety of jurisdictions here locally. I am aware of your prior testimony in other jurisdictions, and after reviewing your CV and being aware, as I've just indicated, I will qualify you as an expert in the areas requested by Mr. Hartzell. Mr. Triesch, I believe that you've been declared an expert here in other cases. It was a couple years ago, I think, but at least I remember you being here. I would assume that that time you were requested and qualified as an expert, but nevertheless, I have reviewed your CV again for purposes of today. And combined with what I've just said and your CV, I will find you as an expert in the areas that Mr. Hartzell has requested. And we'll be going through this again in the next hearing. So
Thank you very much.
I know you know that, so just so we all know and understand that. Thank you very much. And Mr. Drovlik, I'm probably going to mispronounce your name several times, so I'm going to apologize in advance. So, okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Thank you very much. We're here this morning with regard to the CC Corridor commercial rezoning of parcels that were recently annexed into the city. They've now been designated as the Pine Island Road District. You'll see the PIRD designation in the future land use. As part of a small-scale plan amendment process, rezoning is permitted to run concurrently with the future land use change, and that's what we did here. The rezoning will only become effective when the future land use amendment becomes effective, which in this case is 31 days after the August 3rd approval. Our request today is simply to finish that annexation and future land use amendment process by changing the zoning on these annexed parcels from the Lee County AG2 agricultural zoning district to the Cape Coral CC Corridor commercial zoning, which is consistent with the Cape Coral plan and with the Land Development Code. Staff agrees with the proposed rezoning, that it's both appropriate and consistent with the Cape Coral Plan. At this time, what I'd like to do is to introduce Mr. Dravlik, who will present the case to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Glad to be here. First time in front of the hearing examiner in the city of Cape Coral, so I appreciate your pronouncing my name right and accepting me as an expert witness.
And if you could state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Fred Dravlik from RVI Planning and Planning Director in Fort Myers.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, let's take a little tour of the property. So it's a 4-acre parcel, totals 15.5 acres. It's on the southeast corner of Southwest Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway, separated by a parcel that has formerly been annexed into the city in the PIRD and Zone CC. There is an existing gas station between the two pieces of property that will remain. There's a parcel to the south that is not part of this action, but is part of common ownership under contract with the other two parcels. So the long-term intent is for this to develop as one cohesive development. Of course, we can't take intent into account today, and I understand that, but that's the context of the way things are with the ownership of the property. Access to the piece of property then is there's actually legal, as we're doing our due diligence to move forward with developing this property, there is an easement to the east of the gas station, and that will be the intended access onto access way to get to State Route 8 or State Route 78, and then depending on Lee County, there is it's a controlled access way. There is right in, right out onto Veterans, and we're hopefully get another access point at the southern boundary of that, but that is in discussion with Lee County DOT, and that'll be, part of our discussion when we go to a site development plan. To the east of the farthest eastern property is undeveloped land. There's a royalty maintenance building there on the southeast corner. To the west, as I mentioned, in between is the gas station and undeveloped property, and then to the west of that is Veterans right away, and then on the other side is undeveloped property that is also in the PIRD and CC zoning district. The south is the royalty community, and to the north is the State Route 78 right away, and then PIRD and CC zone land that's at the public, I just call it the public shopping center. Property overview and process. So a couple of just facts about this piece of property. One, it's in the Lee County Urban Reserve area, has been for quite a while. This property, both sides of Veterans Parkway and all the way west to the state and Lee County Conservation's lands, has been in this urban reserve boundary, which the intention is to go into an urban area, and long-term intention is to annex into the city of Cape Coral, which we are accomplishing today for both sides. Cape Coral is placed into urban transition area, which is proper for our request. Utilities now are available through the Cape Coral for the sewer, and then has been available through Greater Pine Island water. The property abuts PIRD and CC zone land really in the center of the two pieces of property, and then to the north across the road and to the west across Veterans. As I mentioned, access to two arterial roads, State Route 78 and Veterans Parkway. It has been brought up that there's Little Quail Lane reaches a few of these pieces of property. There's no intention for there to be access through there. That has come up with the landowner there that abuts these pieces of property. And we have met with them and discussed that there is no intention to do that. In fact, I think it would be very difficult to justify that through Lee County to give us access with through a primarily residential area with commercial traffic. Voluntary annexation was approved on May 18th. We met the criteria for annexation. It's a logical extension of the city's boundary, increase the city's supply of potential commercial space or mixed use and multifamily housing. So it increased housing diversity and the potential for diverse housing opportunities, and maintain a cost-effective delivery of public services as the utilities are available to the site and serving abutting properties. So amended from the Lee County Rural Future Land Use to Cape Coral Pine Island Road, as Mr. Hartzell mentioned, on August 3rd, and it'll take place it'll be official 31 days from August 3rd. The PARD land use designation was established to encourage a mixed-use development at key intersections with major north-south streets along Pine Island Road. I think that fits this criteria very well with the intersection of Burnt Store Veterans and at the Pine Island Road. And according to policy 1.15, the only Cape Coral standard zoning district for PIRD that's compatible with the land use plan is CC zoning district, the commercial corridor. And that is our request today. Current land use, staff report made this very clear as well, and they did a great job. We are in agreement with everything the staff report put forward as well. This just shows that our intent is to go into that the property has been moved into the PIRD, and at that point, I have to admit a mistake that I made here, but the left side shows the current zoning. The right side actually is an image of the future land use, and I messed that up. So it should be, the current zoning map should be behind there, and of course the request is for both of these to move into the commercial corridor as marked with the other ones there. So my apologies about that image in the background being incorrect. The staff report is correct, so I would refer to that for that one. Just a little bit of an intensity in the use of property, really based on the commercial corridor request. It allows for a broad list of commercial uses that are consistent with the PIRD, such as retail, office, limited warehouse and light manufacturing, and then multifamily residential that are all consistent with PIRD. The CC district does allow for a floor area ratio of 2.0. However, the PIRD does restrict it to 1.25 FAR, so that would be the development parameters, non-residential development parameters. The CC zoning has a setback for multifamily from Pine Island Road, so allows open space and non-residential lands within 250 feet of Pine Island Road, and then multifamily as a setback 250 feet. I do think we believe that CC zoning does take into account abutting residential areas. It promotes or requires in the land development code enhanced or buffering between the residential uses, actually buffering between any, whether you build commercial or residential, it requires buffering along the boundaries of the CC zoning district property. So it takes into account that it's going to go into some areas that are of more mixed use and maybe lower density residential. And that is the case here where there's a few houses next to this piece of property. So the buffering should help with the compatibility. Residential density, maximum of 25 units per acre. Multifamily, residential of no less than 50 units and a density of no less than 10 units per acre. So it's showing that there's a requirement for, or at least minimum requirements for a mixed-use development. No duplexes are permitted and no single-family homes. There's plenty of single-family homes and lots in Cape Coral, so this one restricts that from happening to improve housing diversity. So in the green box on there, again, I understand that the intent is, but I do think it's fair to say what our intent, what the Gilbane's intent is as a contract purchaser of this is to develop a cohesive mixed-use community with multifamily abutting existing single-family residential uses in the area, and then commercial at the corners of Veterans and Pine Island Road, and then with the, and we can't take this into account, but they do intend to do enhanced buffering that is probably over and above the land development code in order to make sure this is compatible and works well with the surrounding properties.
So your intent is basically a step down? Mm-hmm. Your intent is basically a step down with the residential?
Correct, yeah. Yep.
And obviously, I understand intent versus rezoning, but
Yeah.
I think that will bring some comfort to the neighbors. Thank you.
Yeah. And I do think that the CC zoning is written in that way to help that along with the setback for multifamily. But yeah, the intent is to have the more intense uses at the corners and then the lesser intense uses at the abutting the other properties outside of this subject property.
Well, it's always
Correct.
difficult when you have existing residential properties and then you have development and changing in zoning districts and annexation issues. That combining all that together often creates difficulty. So I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
And it does, and we understand that and want to be sensitive to that during the development process. We'll work with staff to do that. Strategic plan, so these will be the last 4 or 5 slides I go over, but I think they're important with the consistency with the strategic plan, land development code, and the City of Cape Coral's comprehensive plan. And these are, some of this language is taken right out of staff report. Throughout this entire process, they've done a very complete and good job on this. So we're just reinforcing and agreeing with the many items from the staff report. One, they said we were consistent with 3 items of the strategic plan, element A, C, and D. The land development code has 6 requirements for rezoning and that we're required to look at and make sure that we're consistent with. So one is the proposed zoning district is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan as it will be effective with the rezoning or the land use change to Pine Island Road District. The CC zoning district is the only standard district that is consistent with the PIRD, future land use designation. So we'll be consistent there. Full range of uses allowed in the zoning district will be compatible with the existing uses in the area. So staff states that they feel the majority of uses in the CC district should be compatible with the surrounding area, and they mention also that the district also has landscape buffering standards that should assist with the compatibility for the residents to the west. It affects, yeah, and we agree that as we just spoke in the complications with the annexation and the redevelopment into a more intense area than it has been, because this area has been extremely rural for years and years and years, and it was a tree farm at one point, so yeah, so the difficulties there are acknowledged, but we do believe that the uses are going to be compatible and the buffering will make it compatible as well. The range of uses allowed in the proposed zoning district will be compatible with the existing and potential uses in the area under consideration. This area is quickly turning into this corner, and as it should, a commercial employment center, a non-residential services center with retail and other uses or other needs that will help not only capture trips, but I think in some ways reduce the burden on the local roadways as we want to travel as far for local residents to reach those services that they need on a daily basis. And then provide other types of housing, particularly multifamily, that is not what the typical has been in the long history of Cape Coral. So we do believe it's going to be compatible with this area and service the needs of the residents. And that's what the next one is, and I pretty much went over that one. So this zoning district will serve a community need or broader public purpose, and we believe with the employment, non-residential services, and then the multifamily and housing diversity that it serves a long, well-documented need for the city of Cape Coral. And then the characteristics of the proposed rezone, are they suitable for the uses permitted in the proposed zoning districts? Yeah, the site is over 20, site is over 15 acres, that's 24 is not correct. 15 acres inside, has frontage along principal arterials, suitable for a wide range of non-residential uses consistent with the zoning district, and allows for mixed-use development that can provide a need of multifamily units. And then number 6, the zoning district, other than the district request, will create fewer potential adverse impacts. According to policy 115, the only conventional or standard zoning district that is compatible with the PIRD is the CC zoning district, so we believe this meets that criteria as well. And lastly, comprehensive plan consistency, there's 5 criteria. But first of all, the PIRD is a land use designation that is to encourage mixed-use development at key intersections of major north streets along Pine Island Road. The criteria for that location are listed and analyzed in these 5 criteria. Does the property abut an existing and developed corridor zoned area? It does, well, it's separated kind of on both sides, it does abut one, but it's not developed. Across Veterans and across Pine Island Road, they are zoned that, one's undeveloped, and then the public shopping center is a developed corridor zoned area. Does the property abut zoned areas on 2 or more sides? So not directly abutting, but across the right-of-ways they do. Is the property part of a larger tract? No, as part of annexation, it couldn't have been part of the CC zoning already. So these are not part of a larger tract that is zoned corridor commercial. Is the parcel a large assemblage of 3 or more acres? It's 4 parcels, and it definitely exceeds 3 acres. It's 15.5 for the 2. And does the property front Pine Island Road at least 180 feet? It has approximately 800 feet of footage along Pine Island Road. So in summary, based on all the foregone conclusions, we believe the CC district, it's consistent with the comp plan, the goals, objectives, and policies of the city's comp plan. The range of uses allowed in CC district, we believe will be compatible with the existing uses in the surrounding properties. Range of uses in the CC district will be compatible with existing and potential uses. We think the CC district serves a community need, broader public purpose, and the characteristics of the subject property are suitable for uses permitted in the CC district. And lastly, that no zoning district other than CC district will create fewer potential adverse impacts in the surrounding area. So in my professional opinion, I believe that the CC rezoning proposed for the property meets or exceeds all of the land development code and the city's comp plan requirements and is compatible with both.
And of course, a PUD is an alternative, but that would be a different kettle of fish, as it were. So.
It is, yeah, and that's what we did. We did say, it's I guess a wordsmithing, we said the only standard or conventional district that's compatible with the PIRD, but we do understand that a PUD would have been a possibility.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. No other questions. Thank you.
Steve Hartzell, for the record, while Mr. Drovlik's here, and the question about the PUD, is there enough information at this time for you to be able to develop a PUD plan, or is that at this stage, really premature?
In the scheme of the development and what they want to do in the vision of it, yeah, it would be a little bit premature. There's a lot of details we have to work out. Access to State Route 78 is not the simplest thing. I'm working with FDOT, and that little area right there is a bit complicated. So we're working through that and doing some due diligence with trying to getting that access next to the gas station, but then the interaction there and the amount of trips that'll be generated, we really got to figure out that. Access onto Veterans still needs to be established, and then site planning will be taking place and really getting the vision straight. So we have the big, broad bubbles, but we don't have some of the detail that it would take to really pull a PUD off at this time.
Doesn't sound like you have water management issues, though.
Do I?
It doesn't, I'm sorry. It doesn't sound like you have water management issues, though.
I don't think, but if you want somebody to testify that, it better not be me. We do have engineering here just in case there's some specific questions, but I don't believe we do.
I don't believe you do either. Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Thank you. Madam Hearing Examiner, at this time, as we pointed out, this is really the last step of a process that started with annexations to reduce enclaves in the city, followed up with the comprehensive plan amendment that turned this to the Pine Island Road District, and really now we're at the final step of getting the zoning to be Cape Coral zoning instead of Lee County zoning. We believe that the corridor commercial is the most appropriate, frankly, the only one in the PIRD district that is appropriate under the standard zoning category. This time we would be happy to answer any questions, but we understand the staff has a presentation to make as well, so we'll wrap it up.
I was wondering if you were going to put on Mr. Triche.
I don't intend to unless there are specific questions that need to be addressed with regard to traffic.
I would like to ask him some questions about the access points. We
Certainly.
can do it in rebuttal, we could do it now, it doesn't matter either way to me.
Nope, we're happy to do that right now.
Mr. Trees,
Good
I
morning,
didn't
Ted
want you to-
Shreesh with TR Transportation Consultants.
I didn't want you to waste a trip.
Yes,
But I do have some real questions. Can you put on the record, I understand Mr. Dravlik has testified regarding the access points, but you're a transportation expert, so I wanted you to testify regarding the Little Quail Lane and the 3 access points on Veterans that are proposed, and any transportation issues that you see related to those. Thank you.
that's correct. As Mr. Dravlik indicated, we won't be accessing Little Quail Lane to Pine Island. We will be accessing the easement that goes adjacent to the gas station to access Pine Island Road. We've already met with FDOT, as that section of Pine Island Road is under FDOT control. That access is limited to a right-in, right-out movement only. And then we also have 2 access designations on Veterans Parkway that are approved right now under Lee County. Veterans Parkway is under Lee County's control. It is a controlled access facility, meaning that access connections are controlled by the Board of County Commissioners by resolution. And those 2 locations that are shown on this aerial to the, I guess it's shown on both of these aerial photos in the red star. We have one at the northern portion of the property that's a right-in, right-out, and one at the southern end of the property that's a right-in, right-out. And we are currently working with Lee County to, there's a median opening just to the south of that southern property line that serves the property on the west side that's Lee County Conservation 2020 land. And we met with Lee County DOT, and we're currently studying and turning in an analysis to relocate that median opening to that southern location where that star is, to serve both the properties on both the east and west side of Veterans Parkway. In the initial meetings with DOT, they were receptive to that idea, but we have to go through the process and do the analysis, and then have to go to the county commissioners as an amendment to the resolution has to be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So that's a process that's going to be ongoing over the next few months. But right now, this eastern property will have 2 access drives to Veterans Parkway that are currently approved, and then the access to Pine Island Road.
Well, I bet the Summerlin Road project predates both you and me, if I were guessing. But I remember that there was some discussion about Summerlin was supposed to be a limited access, and then it wasn't, and then there was some concern about that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the explanation on Veterans, because I think Veterans was intended as a limited access.
Yes.
But it sounds like the applicant is sensitive to the need to retain that limited access as much as possible. Would you agree with that?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions. If there's anything else you'd like to testify to, please feel
Nope.
free.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartzell. All right, Mr. Boyko, thank you.
All right, good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Once again, Chad Boyko, Principal Planner with the City's Planning Division. And prior to my presentation, I would like to be recognized as an expert witness based upon previous testimony on similar matters for zoning and land use, and also my credentials are obtainable with the City Clerk's office.
I will find you as an expert based upon your testimony in prior hearings regarding issues that are similar to the issues before us today, and also based upon your CV, which is on record with the hearing examiner. I keep saying hearing examiner, the City Clerk. Apologies to the City Clerk. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So this is RZN 2214. This is a privately initiated rezoning application. The applicant for this is 3150 Southwest Pine Island Road, LLC. It's at the southeast corner of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway, and it has frontage on both of those roadways. The size is just a little under 15.5 acres. Upon the annexation, because there are surrounding utilities to this site was designated to be within the Urban Services Transition Area, which means that utilities are either available or will be available within the near future per the comprehensive plan. For this site in particular, there are utilities that are available the city of Cape Coral can provide the sewer services, and then water is available to be provided by the Greater Pineland Water Association. And then the applicant's request is a rezone from AG2, a Lee County designation, to commercial corridor. And the reason we do that is because once a parcel is annexed, it still retains the Lee County or the county future land use and zoning designation, and any further development actions have to be done by way of a future land use amendment and a rezone application. So we have an aerial map for you on the left-hand side of the screen. The site is 4 parcels within Southwest Cape Coral. It's at that intersection of Pineland Road and Veterans Parkway. It was recently annexed back in March. It's primarily undeveloped. There are 3 parcels that are undeveloped, including the largest parcels that is at the direct intersection. And then there is 1 single-family home that is a part of this site. The future land use was recently, as of last Wednesday, amended to the Pineland Road District, so it's a pretty fresh land use designation. And it still retains the Lee County zoning designation, which would have to be approved by City Council eventually. And then the applicant's letter of intent states that the future development is a mixed-use project consisting of both non-residential and multifamily development. So the current zoning on your left, you can see that by way of the gray shading on here, it's still within the Lee County designation. The surrounding zoning to the north and then to the west is the commercial corridor, which is what the applicant is requesting. To the south, you have Lee County designation as well. That's part of the Royal T subdivision. And then to the west, you have a sort of strip of commercial corridor between the larger site within this and the 3 smaller parcels. And then on the right-hand side of your screen, the proposal is to have the entire site go to the commercial corridor district, and it'll kind of fill in that gap that's located at the southeast intersection between the zoning and land use. So the first thing we looked at when analyzing the applicant's request for the CC district was based upon the 6 standards for rezones within our LDC. The first standard is whether the proposed zoning district is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and staff finds that the proposed commercial corridor district is consistent with the Pineland Road future land use designation. The comprehensive plan only really lists out the planned unit development district as the only other district that could be utilized within the PIRD designation. The second standard is whether the full range of uses allowed in the proposed district will be compatible with the existing uses in the area under consideration. Staff finds that the CC district allows a wide range of commercial, retail, office, service uses such as restaurants, banks, things like that, and also has multifamily uses allowed within there with restrictions. It was hit on earlier by Mr. Dravlik in regards to the setback that is required within the CC district at the 250 feet from the Pineland Road frontage, and also there are some limitations on the density and intensity based upon the maximum density and then the minimum density that is required as well for the CC district. Most of the area that's around here that is developed, except for what is to the south, is commercial. You see some commercial to the north. You see the gas station that is located in between the site to the west of this site. To the south, you do have the Royal T subdivision, but based upon some sort of geographical advantages, the fact that it's already a developed subdivision, they have some existing buffering there. There's roughly about 5 or 6 houses that would be adjacent to the southern border of the site. And based upon the existing buffering that is within Royal T, and then the proposed buffering that would have to be required by the applicant per the commercial corridor district, you do find that there should be some pretty intensive separation and landscape buffering between the multifamily that would be proposed on this portion of the site and that existing Royal T subdivision. Based upon the fact that the site's at an intersection, you have 2 sides that are basically arterial roadways to the east and to the north, and so there would be natural compatibility there. And staff also finds that the rezone that is proposed is a similar district that you find all along that east-west corridor of Pineland Road District. It was put there primarily because when you have frontage and access from a road like Pineland Road, you want to make sure that you are getting the highest and best use and also uses that fit. For instance, you wouldn't have single family that would be appropriate there based upon the fact that it's a major arterial, principal arterial, and the high rate of traffic really lends itself to things such as multifamily and commercial development. We mentioned earlier that the CC district will also be providing buffers to the south for the residential areas, and it should enhance compatibility with those homes that are within Royal T. The third standard is whether the range of uses allowed in the proposed district will be compatible with the existing and potential uses in the area under consideration. We mentioned earlier that the area to the north is commercial, and that Coral Shores commercial subdivision is primarily built out, and whatever goes along this site will also be compatible with what is proposed in that area. You do have the gas station to the east. Mix West is likely to be developed in the future, which you'll hear about in the next presentation. And then with Royalty, you've got mostly built out with single-family homes. I think within Royalty, you only have some scattered vacant lots still there. So whatever potential uses, it's really limited to a couple of single-family homes within there. And we've already kind of talked about the landscape buffering within the commercial corridor district should lend compatibility with any future uses that will go in that nearby area. The fourth standard is whether the proposed district will serve a community need or a broader public purpose. And we mentioned in our staff report that the city has a well-documented need for both multifamily and non-residential development. There is a shortage of both, primarily based upon the city's pre-platted nature, and the amendment will add both multifamily, potential multifamily and non-residential uses at this site. Staff finds that we really don't have any need for single-family uses within this site based upon the large number of already existing built single-family homes and the potential based upon single-family lots that are numerous throughout the city of Cape Coral. The fifth standard is whether the characteristics of the proposed rezoning area are suitable for the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. Staff finds with the site being a little over 15 acres, you have a nice size for a commercial and mixed-use development with, and this is really attractive, with frontage on 2 arterial roadways. The rezone is an assemblage, which we always encourage for commercial or mixed-use development. It has sufficient width and depth to accommodate a quality development. You're not talking about a shallow row of lots along Pineland Road here. You're talking about something that has 15 acres of width and depth that usually lends itself to a higher quality development rather than trying to fit something into a small space with limited frontage and depth. And then lastly, the Pineland Road corridor is an ideal place for commercial and multifamily due to the frontage and the classification of the roadway. We mentioned earlier that this really isn't an appropriate area for single family or for some low intensity uses. So we find that it's compatible for that CC district. And then lastly, whether the zoning district, other than the one requested, will create fewer potential adverse impacts to the existing uses in the area. We mentioned that the CC district is the only thing that is allowed by right within the PIRD designation. You do have the PUD, however, that is a sort of a separate vehicle in this matter. So there really isn't any other districts within that PIRD that are allowed other than the requested CC district. We also looked at the comprehensive plan with the corridor siting criteria found in Chapter 4, Policy 1.15. Does the property abut an existing and developed corridor zoned area? And the answer is yes, it abuts that site that is to the east that is developed with a gas station. Second question is, does the property abut corridor zoned area on 2 sides or more? And the answer to that is no. The site only abuts CC zoned parcels to the east, and some of that's based upon the fact that you have the Royalty division to the south, and then you have it's at the intersection of 2 roadways, so it kind of limits its availability to have abuttingness to already existing corridor zoned areas. The third question is the property part of a large tract, a portion of which is already zoned corridor? It's not part of a large tract, but staff finds that there is some ownership linkage there with a contract of purchase where you will have a unified development located at that intersection. The next question is the parcel a large lot assemblage of 3 or more acres? And the answer is yes. It's 4 parcels that are totaling over 15 acres in size. And then lastly, does the property front Pineland Road on at least 180 feet? And the answer to that is yes, it has over 300 feet of frontage along Pine Island Road. So our recommendation, based upon the analysis through the comprehensive plan and the land development code, is that the CC district is consistent and compatible with the area, and staff recommends approval of the rezone request. And I will state that after the deadline set by the hearing examiner, we did receive 1 email of opposition to this request.
And can you tell me what the contents
I believe he was a resident within Royalty. He was out of town. He just stated that he thought that it wasn't He thought that maybe it was too much commercial or multifamily going into the site, and he cited some sort of traffic congestion concerns along Pine Island Road.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, no questions, thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there members of the public who wish, oh, I see our clerk is bringing up some requests. Thank you very much. All right. The first person who is requested is Deborah Swisher, I believe, Swisher Hicks. Ma'am, I believe you've been sworn in, and you're welcome to use the podium over there for your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Deborah Swisher Hicks. I'm a Pine Island resident. I just wanted to make sure that the record was straight, that the Pine Island Road is currently a two-lane road. I do understand at some point, like in 2030, it might be extended to a four-lane. But I also want to make sure that it's understood that Veterans Parkway is a maximum of going to be 4 lanes. There was discussion of a 6-lane through there at some point, but that wasn't even going to occur until like 2030, 2045, something of that nature. I have a copy of the 2030 long-range option. I can submit for your records.
That's fine.
And it also shows that Pine Island is just maximum of 4 for that area, and that it is a limited access on veterans. That's it.
All right, anything else?
I think it's too big for the area, and it's a transitional area, and I think the congestion on the corner is going to be too much for evacuation.
Okay, thank you. If you want the clerk to have the document that you were referencing, you're welcome to bring it over and either hand it to the Assistant City Attorney or hand it directly to the clerk. Thank you very much. All right. The next, I think I have 2 from the same person. Okay, no problem. Is there anyone else here who would like to present testimony from the public? This is your opportunity to provide input to the hearing examiner if you choose. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand, so I will close the public comment section of the public hearing, bring it back to the applicant's representative. Mr. Hartzell, you're free to yourself or your team to address public comment, or you're free not to, as you choose. Thank you.
We're happy to answer any questions. I think as the City Council recognized when the future land use change was approved, the city does recognize that they need to be working with both the state and with the county with regard to widening and increasing the capacity of both Veterans Parkway and Pine Island Road. They're very well aware of that, and they are working toward that. We submit that the staff report and the testimony that you've heard today demonstrates that this parcel or these parcels, this location, meets the criteria for the corridor commercial zoning, and that it's both consistent with the comprehensive plan and with all of the requirements of the Land Development Code. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
You wish to incorporate staff testimony today into your presentation as well?
Yes, thank you.
Do members of your team have any further testimony at this time?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Boyko, thank you. This is your opportunity to address public comment, or you can choose not to as you see fit.
I have no further comments or input.
All right, I have no questions. Thank you very much. I will take the comments made at public comment under consideration, review all the materials that have been provided, and consider all the testimony provided today, and I will try to get my recommendation out as quickly as possible. As I've said twice now, and now 3rd time, this time is money, and I understand that. I appreciate the folks who came out today, coming today to public comment, whether or not you testified. This is an important process. It's a public process so that everybody hears the same thing at the same time. So I want to thank you all for coming today, even though you chose not to testify. I have no idea what you would have said, but I appreciate you coming today. Thank you. All right, at this time, I'm closing hearing number C and opening hearing number D. For the benefit of the public, you will probably hear testimony that's not dissimilar to what you've heard in the hearing number C. The reason why we do it separately is that two separate parcels, two separate applications, and so therefore each presentation goes from the beginning through the entire process. So don't be surprised if you hear a lot of the same testimony. Mr. Boyko, you're up. Thank you.
Waiting to read it in.
I'm sorry. Oh, I apologize.
Case RZN
Anything on here?
22-000015, address multiple properties, applicant, multiple applicants. The applicant requests a rezone from agricultural AG2, a Lee County designation to commercial corridor CC for 4 parcels totaling 24.33 acres. The site is located near the intersection of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway and has frontage on Pine Island Road. The rezone will allow for commercial, multifamily, or mixed-use development on a site that was recently annexed into Cape Coral. The City of Cape Coral will provide sewer service while the Greater Pine Island Water Association has the authority to provide water service. Any persons giving testimony today, if you are able, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning again, Mr. Boyko.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. Once again, Chad Boyko, Principal Planner with the City's Planning Division. Prior to the applicant's presentation, I would like to state that this case was advertised properly. We mailed letters to residents within 500 feet of the parcel of the site. We posted a sign on the site as well, and then also placed an ad in a newspaper of local circulation, and all of this was done prior to 10 days before this hearing.
Thank you. I will find that a proper public notice was given.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Hartzell? Once you get good at the technology, you have to come back. It's an old Greek legend.
There's no chance of that. I always get to, all right, wait. I don't get to. I like it when your IT guy comes up and goes, from the beginning. Yes, we'll start at the beginning. Thank you, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, I'm Steve Hartzell with Pavis Law Firm. I am here on behalf of the applicants who are the owners and contract purchasers of the property. With me today are our team members, Fred Dravlik, who is Planning Director at RVI Planning, Ted Triesch, President of TR Transportation Consultants, Daniela Rodriguez, who is the Development Manager at Gilbane Development, and Paulette Ducharme Hansen of Milhoff Aubuchon Realty. A couple of housekeeping items. Before we get started, I would like to incorporate the staff report into our presentation, as well as our PowerPoint and the exhibits that were provided to the hearing examiner and the staff prior to the hearing.
I will so incorporate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, for the record, I would like to submit both Mr. Triesch and Fred Dravlik as experts in their various areas of expertise. I have provided previously copies of their resumes. Mr. Triesch is an expert in transportation planning. He's got 25 years in that area. Mr. Dravlik is an expert in land use and development and zoning. As a planner, he has 17 years' experience. Not only have they both been qualified as experts in Lee County, but more recently, they've been qualified as an expert before the hearing examiner. I would submit them as experts.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I will find Mr. Triesch as an expert based upon his CV, which you previously provided, based upon his testimony before the hearing examiner previously, and based upon his testimony here today in a separate hearing. I will find him as an expert witness in the areas that you've indicated. I will similarly find Mr. Dravlik as an expert based upon his CV, based upon his credentials, and also based upon his many years of service in and around Lee County and in other areas of the state of Florida. some of which I have observed as someone who's been in and around government for a very long time, and also based upon his testimony today in another hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we have said before, we're here this morning with regard to the CC Corridor Commercial Rezoning, parcels that were recently annexed into the city and have now been designated as Pine Island Road District, PIRD, future land use. As part of that small-scale plan amendment process, the rezoning is permitted to run concurrently with a future land use change, and then that rezoning becomes effective only after the future land use amendment has become effective, in this case, 31 days after the August 3rd future land use change. Our request today is simply to finish that annexation and future land use amendment process by changing the zoning from the annexed Lee County AG2 agricultural zoning to the City of Cape Coral CC Corridor commercial zoning. That would be consistent with the Cape Coral Plan and the recently adopted PIRD future land use. Staff agrees with the proposed rezoning, that it's appropriate and consistent with the plan, and at this time I'll introduce Mr. Dravlik, put on the planning presentation. Thank you.
Good morning again, Mr. Dravlik.
Good morning again, Madam Hearing Examiner. Be pleased to run through this. We'll start with a little tour of this side of this piece of property. This is a little bit bigger of a piece of property. This is a subject 4 parcels, 24.3 acres. I speak about it as abutting veterans and the corner. It's not, but the reason I'm in the habit of speaking about that is because this is also, those pieces of property at the corner are also under contract for purchase by Gilbane and intended to be a cohesive development for the entire corner. But I'll speak about them separately and not include that in the discussion because we can't take that into account. So this 4 pieces of property do have some existing development on it. There is an existing church that is, I believe it's even discussed as a historic building there. It will remain. That piece of property is being split approximately in half, and will become, that southern part will become part of this cohesive development, but the church is going to remain. The nursery building will be under ownership, and it will eventually be removed for this development, for development purposes on this piece of property. We currently have a request for a lot split in for the church property, and we'll have to go through that, either platting or I think now I heard we have to go through the plat process and then a lot split, but we're in process to do that. To the east of this property is undeveloped, but it is in the PIRD and zoned commercial corridor. As I mentioned, it's under common ownership, at least contract for purchase for common ownership. To the west are Lee County lands, a lot of it long developed with scattered single-family homes. And just past that is the Matlacha Fire Station. To the south, conservation lands, Lee County, and of course out even farther than that is all the state TIF lands that are all part of conservation. To the north is of course the Pine Island Road right-of-way that is on this side controlled by Lee County, but there is an FDOT drainage and scattered single-family lots just across the road. Property overview and process. This property is in the Lee County Urban Reserve area, which is intended to be annexed into the city of Cape Coral, which it now is. It's in the urban transition area, and it does have sewer and water available. Cape Coral for sewer and Greater Pine Island Water Association for water. It abuts PIRD and CC zone land to the east, extending, and then this will extend that arterial corner approximately a half mile. Access onto Pine Island Road and access onto veterans through that other piece of property would be the intention that those two would provide common access, so that this property would be able to also access Veteran Parkway. But for the sake of this discussion, it will have direct access onto Pine Island Road. Voluntary annexation was approved May 18th. It served as a logical extension of the city's boundary, increased the city's supply of commercial space increase the possibility of housing diversity and other housing opportunities that are not single-family. Maintains cost-effective delivery of public services, as all urban services were available through either Greater Pine Island or the city of Cape Coral. Amended from Lee County Rural Future Land Use to the PIRD August 3rd. As Steve mentioned, it'll be effective in 31 days from August 3rd. The PIRD land use designation was established for the purpose of mixed-use development at key intersections, and with Veterans and Pine Island being nearby, then this fits that, that place that this would be encouraged to be the Pine Island Road District. As we mentioned several times, then the Cape Coral Standard Zoning District, Commercial Corridor is the only one that's really appropriate, other than a PUD, but it's the only standard by right district that is appropriate according to policy 1.15 in the comp plan. The maps real quick. So the left is the proposed land use, or the prior land use. And the recently approved PIRD shows is the map on the right, so that gives you the lay of the land for the land use category of PIRD being established, and gives you a picture of where it's abutting the other PIRD approved properties. As for the zoning, it is currently Lee County agricultural zoning, and then to the right is the proposed commercial corridor zoning, and you can see that it is abuts then already approved commercial corridor zoning to the west, to the east, and across the road, also at the corners, and pending the other zoning, then this entire corridor, or this entire corner, will be zoned commercial corridor as is appropriate. The intensity and use of the property, so the CC district allows for a wide range of commercial uses and multifamily uses that are consistent with the Pine Island Road District. It allows a floor area ratio of 2.0, but the Pine Island Road District sets the development parameters at a floor area ratio of 1.25. The CC zoning sets back multifamily from Pine Island Road so that the non-residential uses and open space would be permitted along Pine Island Road, but multifamily is also part of the mixed use that is encouraged in this zoning district. Residential is up to 25 units an acre, minimum of 50 units, at a minimum of 10 units an acre. So the density and intensity of mixed use is well established in the CC zoning district as an appropriate and desirable use along in the Pine Island Road District. Doesn't allow duplexes or single family. There's a lot more opportunities for that in other places in the city of Cape Coral. So this is a district that is designed to improve housing diversity and allow for non-residential uses that can serve as employment and commercial services for local residents. The intent, understanding that the long-term development intent is open compared to what we would say, but the intent of the contract purchase is to develop this as a mixed-use community, multifamily in the back, multifamily abutting the residential area with the more intense uses towards the corners of Veterans and Pine Island, and enhanced buffering there's buffering according to the LDC that will be required regardless. We intend to go on beyond the buffering and make it compatibility because they really want this to be a high-end and very desirable mixed-use community. Consistency with so there's a number of consistencies we want to go through quickly. The strategic plan alignment, staff mentioned, and we agreed that there's 3 elements of the strategic plan of the city of Cape Coral that we are consistent with, element A, C, and D. 6 criteria for rezoning in the land development code that we believe we're consistent with for the following reasons. Number 1 is the proposed zoning district is consistent with the comp plan. As mentioned, the PIRD will be approved in 31 days from August 3rd. The CC zoning district is the only standard by right zoning district that is consistent with the PIRD future land use designation. Full range of uses allowed in this proposed zoning district, compatible with the existing areas and with the potential uses in the area under consideration. So I'll lump 2 and 3 together. We believe the majority uses are consistent with the location being near the corner of the 2 arterials, with the Pine Island Road District future land use designation that's already been approved and on the, almost and ready to be adopted before Labor Day, that these uses are compatible with the existing surrounding land uses, which are a few scattered single-family houses, and then because of the land development code and other requirements, and that the uses that will be next to them will be buffered and the compatibility will be such, and take into consideration that this is a mixed-use area that was more rural in nature, and that be sensitive to that as part of development. The final 3 criteria: proposed zoning district will serve a community need and broader public purpose. It's a well-documented need in the city of Cape Coral for non-residential and multifamily residential housing, really truly alternatives to single-family lots. And this fulfills that perfectly. It's what it was designed for. It was what the long-term planning really made this district for, and it's compatible and consistent with other rezonings and land use changes that have gone on along Pine Island Road to the east, along Pine Island Road, to encourage this kind of alternative development in housing and non-residential uses. Rezone suitable for uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. The rezone area is suitable. Site's over 24 acres. So this has frontage on a principal arterial. Really has, I think it was over 1,500 feet or maybe a little bit more than that on Pine Island Road. So the site, the design of the site, the assemblage of 4 parcels that are 24 acres really allow for a well-designed property in depth and in scope, as the property is approximately 1,200 feet deep as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in design for a desirable development. And any other district that requests to prevent fewer potential adverse impacts. Like I said, the only by right district that's compatible with the Pine Island Road District is the commercial corridor. We do acknowledge that a PUD would be the only alternative district. That's a whole different route that is beyond the capabilities of this right now, and really is just a different mechanism for that. But we believe it wouldn't be necessary to and would create fewer potential adverse impacts as the CC zoning district takes into account that it's going to be in a mixed-use area, thus buffers and the other requirements that are in place. We believe it's consistent with the comp plan, Chapter 4, Policy 1.15.1 specifically has 5 criteria for if it's a good candidate for a rezone to commercial corridor. Does it abut existing developed corridor zoned areas? It does abut to the east. The corner at Veterans and Pine Island is zoned CC. Also to the northeast across the road is also zoned CC across Pine Island Road. Does a property abut zoned area on 2 or more sides? Just on one side. It's to the west is Lee County. To the east is where the property that abuts, but then to the south is all state or Lee County conservation land, so that wouldn't be possible. Is the property part of a larger tract? No, it was just annexed into the city of Cape Coral, so it was not part of a larger tract that was already zoned commercial corridor. It's a large assemblage, as mentioned, 4 parcels that exceed 3 acres. It's 24 acres total, and it has probably Pine Island Road is at least 180 feet, over 800 feet, but I know it's a little bit more than that. So it has plenty of frontage on Pine Island Road. And in conclusion, the slides to restate some of these items in a more concise way. We believe the CC district is consistent with the comp plan, goals and objectives and policies. Range of uses in the district will be compatible with the existing uses in the surrounding properties. We believe the range of uses allowed in the CC district will be compatible with the existing and potential uses. The CC district will serve the community need and a broader public purpose in this area with multifamily housing and non-residential development. characteristics of the property are suitable for the uses permitted in the CC district, and that no other zoning district other than the CC will create fewer potential adverse impacts. So it is in my professional opinion as an AICP planner that the CC rezoning proposed for this property meets or exceeds all of the Land Development Code and Cape Coral Comp Plan requirements and is in compliance with both. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here for questions.
Thank you. I have one question. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for you or Mr. Hartzell. Do you know what the status of discussions, if any, with the Greater Pine Island Water Authority have been?
Yeah, I mean, I can sum up what we've gone through to date.
Sure.
That the Greater Pine Island has a right to serve this piece of property with water for, I think it's till 2050, I believe it is. So it's quite a while, and they want to keep that right to on the franchise right to serve that. So, I mean, the city would want to serve it for water and try to make offer and negotiations for that. But I believe right now, as it stands, the last I heard, Greater Pine Island wants to keep the franchise rights and serve that property until that right expires.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have no other questions.
Mr. Treese is here if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask him with regard to the transportation. Otherwise, we submit that we have demonstrated that the CC district is the appropriate district.
I have no questions for Mr. Treese, and I will note your comment for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Boyko, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner.
I
Since
did
I've already,
notice-
do I need to be recognized as an expert witness again?
Yes.
I've already done it once. Okay, well, I would like to be recognized as an expert witness for this case based upon my previous testimony in cases similar to this, and also with the fact that my credentials are obtainable with the city clerk's office.
Thank you. I will recognize you for as an expert regarding issues that are relevant to this hearing today based upon your CV, your prior testimony and hearings regarding issues that are similar to the issues in front of us today, and also based upon your prior testimony today in another hearing. Thank you.
All right, so this is RZN 2215, privately initiated rezone application. It has multiple applicants, and there's 4 owners that are part of this as well. It's located near the southwest corner of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway. It's a little under 24.5 acres, and it's within the urban services transition area upon the annexation, basically due to the fact that it has access to city sewer and has access to water through the Greater Pine Island Water Association. And then the applicant's request is a rezone from AG2, which is a Lee County zoning designation, to the commercial corridor City of Cape Coral designation. Here's an aerial map on the left and some background for this. It's 4 parcels within southwest Cape Coral. It's near the intersection of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway, separated from that intersection by 2 parcels that will potentially have common ownership with the site that we are discussing here today. It was recently annexed back in March. 2 of the sites are undeveloped. Those are the 2 most western sites on the 2 most western parcels within this site. And then the other 2 sites, one is developed with a church, and then there is a nursery that is developed on the easternmost portion of this site. The future land use was recently amended to Pine Island Road District, the PIRD. That was done last Wednesday, the 3rd. And then it still retains the Lee County zoning, which is why we're before you this morning. And then the applicant states in their letter of intent that the future development of this site is for a mixed-use project. So the current zoning of the 4 parcels, as you can see on the map on the left-hand side of the screen, it's currently within Lee County. It's at AG2. It's indicated by the gray shading within that. The surrounding zoning to the north is primarily single-family residential zoning, and there's just a little bit of commercial corridor that is located to the northeast of this site. To the direct east is commercial corridor zoning, and then to the south and to the west you have Lee County zoning. I believe the south is probably something along the preservation line because that's 2020 property, and then to the west is probably some similar zoning, and there's some single-family homes that are located directly to the west. And then the proposed zoning is the CC district, and it'll make a node of a CC district located at the intersection of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway. So the first thing that we looked at was for analysis our land development code, which has the 6 standards to evaluate rezones. The first standard is whether the proposed district is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and staff finds that the CC district is consistent with the Pine Island Road future land use classification as determined by our comprehensive plan and the table of compatible land use and zoning districts. The second standard is whether the full range of uses allowed in the proposed zoning district will be compatible with the existing uses in the area. Staff finds that the CC district allows for a variety of commercial, office service, light industrial, and multifamily with restrictions. Areas to the north across Pine Island Road and to the west is residential. There's some preservation land to the south, and then there's undeveloped CC zoned land to the east. This rezone will be a similar district for sites that are located along Pine Island Road. For the compatibility's sake with the residential that is located to the west, we've discussed it previously, but the CC district does allow for, it requires enhanced buffering between the CC district and any existing residential uses. Those uses are currently within Lee County zoning. However, city staff, by way of the land development code, would treat those essentially as like an R1 zoned parcel in terms of the fact that the use on those parcels is single family homes, and we would treat the buffering standards similar to any other single family homes that would be located within the city of Cape Coral. Area to the south is undeveloped in its preservation, and other than things such as water management and protecting the runoff going into that, there really isn't any risk of compatibility with undeveloped preservation land to the south. The third standard is whether the range of uses allowed in the district will be compatible with the existing and potential uses in the area under consideration. Staff notes that there's really only one undeveloped area nearby, which is east of this property, and that is under a similar potential ownership pattern with this site. Staff notes that the development would create a commercial node at a direct intersection of 2 arterial roadways, and Pine Island Road has experienced this similar mix of development of residential and commercial uses in the past. And, you know, other than the potential of a commercial development going in at the northeast corner of Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway, there isn't a lot of undeveloped potential uses that exist in this area. And the previous standard discussed the compatibility with the existing residential uses in this area. The fourth standard is whether the proposed district will serve a community need or broader public purpose. The city has a documented history of needing both multifamily and non-residential land use. This will add 24 acres of both potential multifamily and commercial lands within the city of Cape Coral. And staff notes that the CC doesn't allow for single-family homes or duplexes, which we already have a large stock and a potential stock for single-family homes and duplexes based upon the zoning and the number of areas that are designated for such uses. The fifth standard is the characteristics of the proposed rezone area are suitable for the uses permitted in the proposed district. Staff notes that the site is a little over 24 acres with frontage on at least one principal arterial roadway. The rezone is an assemblage of 4 parcels, which is something that we encourage for commercial development in order to have sites that have sufficient width and depth to accommodate quality development. We try to avoid things such as making another Del Prado within areas of the city. And due to the size, the width, and the depth of this site, you would presumably get a high-quality development that is not something similar to what you see along Del Prado Boulevard. Lastly, Pine Island Road corridor, based upon its access and frontage on Pine Island Road, is an ideal place for commercial, multifamily, and mixed use due to that frontage along that classification of roadway. And then lastly, the sixth standard is whether a zoning district other than the district requested will create fewer potential adverse impacts to existing uses in the area. And staff notes that the only other district that's compatible with the PIRD designation is a planned unit development, and that's really sort of a different animal with this. Does that allow for some different things in terms of conditions? Yes, but also that has to be something that is approved by city council. And there's a lot of variables and contingencies that go into a PUD and whether or not you would have fewer adverse impacts. And staff notes that with the CC district, you already have the primary, the main, when we're looking at creating adverse impacts, usually most of that is done through landscape buffering and screening, and the CC district already allows for a pretty robust landscape buffer and screening when it's adjacent to single-family residential zoning. We also looked at the comprehensive plan with the corridor siting criteria. The first question is, does the property abut an existing and developed corridor zoned area? It does not. It abuts a undeveloped corridor zoned area to the east. The second question is, does the property abut corridor zoned area on two sides or more? The answer to that is no. It only abuts it up to the east on one side, and a little bit of that is geographical based upon the fact that you have Lee County lands that is located to the west, to the south, and then also you have a frontage on a roadway to the north. The next question is the property part of a large tract, a portion of which is already zoned corridor? Staff notes that it's not part of a large tract already zoned corridor. However, there is a potential for it to be part of that based upon the fact that the area to the east is under similar potential ownership. The next question is the parcel a large lot assemblage of 3 or more acres? Yes, this is 4 parcels that total over 24 acres in size. And then lastly, does the property front Pine Island Road on at least 180 feet? And staff notes that the site has over 800 feet of frontage along Pine Island Road, so it does meet that standard or question. And then lastly, our recommendation is that based upon analysis of the comprehensive plan and the city's land development code, staff finds that the proposed CC district is consistent and compatible, and staff recommends approval of the applicant's request.
Thank you. I have no questions. This is a public hearing. I have one request to speak regarding this hearing, and if there are other folks in the audience that wish to speak as well, we will consider that. And the one that I have is once again from Deborah Swisher Hicks. Ma'am, feel free to come up. Thank you.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak. My name is Deborah Swisher Hicks. I'm a Pine Island resident. This particular plan is a little bit different than the other side in the sense that it is now going to be blocking the only roadway which Pine Island and the outer islands have to evacuate during any type of season, and hurricane or otherwise. Yes, Lee County has the is the requirement. They hold what can be built on the roadway. You'll have to excuse me, I'm nervous. And I have the map showing that the land in question is also high hurricane.
It's okay. Take your time.
Thank you. Coastal high hazard area. The area is also, according to what the applicant wrote and stated in previous, which I'd like to thank them for finally recognizing that the church is a historical. This is the first time that it's actually been mentioned to my knowledge. That it, according to what was written up by the applicant, it was in Hurricane Evacuation Zone B, but it's actually in Evacuation Zone A, which means it's going to be evacuating at the same time as everybody on the island, island and the outer island. So it's also, once again, it's currently a 2-lane road with the possibility of growing to a 4-lane road at some point in the future, maybe. As you were mentioned, and what I heard is that the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or, it might be this or it could be that, should not be even considered into this applicant. I think it's a little too soon to actually mark it as a commercial corridor zone. It hasn't even been under finished contract, I should say, to be combined as into one. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I would like to also put in record the Lee County resolution marking it as the church as a historical district, just for the records. There's also an easement that's adjacent to that property. I don't know if it matters to this proceeding or not, but I'd like to submit that. Once again, I am here also to state that that particular roadway, Pine Island Road, is a integral part to everybody's safety, and having such a large development being considered for that, and only, I believe I heard them saying that the majority of the property is actually going to be going on and off Pine Island Road. So that, once again, that's going to impact the island folk during evacuation, so it's a safety hazard. I also have a map, like I submitted on the last application, that has to do with the long-range forecast, that Veterans is only a 4-lane road. It's not a 6-lane road as it's written by the applicant. And again, I'd like to restate that I think it's premature to put it as a commercial corridor. I think it's premature to even put it as a Pine Island Road District because there's other options that might be coming in the future for the road. Those at the Burnt Store Road District, I believe it is. Still able to do a lot of the same development, just has to have a visual difference, which is more pleasing to the eye as it was described to me during one of the meetings. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for coming in today. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify? Come on up, ma'am. Thank you. And when you get there, could you state your name for the record, please?
Not a problem, Deborah. Hi, my name is Juanita Jupp. I'm a member of the First Baptist Church of Mount Lachey, where my husband is the pastor. And we're part of this annexation, part of this group we're talking about today. And we're very pleased to be residents of the city of Cape Coral. My husband and I do live in a church-owned home on the property near the church. And we're excited about the change that's about to happen, or that we're hoping to happen with the zoning change. We're excited to see residential homes there, we don't care what they are. We're happy to have neighbors. We're excited about even the commercial, because things will be within, easy driving distance or walking distance from us. And we're just really excited. We're up to the challenges. We understand that all growth, whether it's physical or in our city, isn't easy, but it's doable, and we appreciate what the city of Cape Coral is doing, working so hard to get this done, and we appreciate the others who are involved in this, and we're looking forward to seeing what happens very much.
Thank you. Could you spell your name for the clerk, please?
Sure. Juanita, Jupp as in pickle peppers.
Thank
My
you very
husband's much more spiritual. He would say Peter and Paul.
I appreciate both of the characterizations. Thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else who'd like to present testimony, public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section of the public hearing and bring it back to the applicant's representative. Mr. Hartzell, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Steve Hartzell for the record. Just briefly, we're happy to bring back either Mr. Trish or Mr. Dravlik to answer any questions that you might have. We understand that folks from Pine Island might be concerned or would be concerned about the capacity of Pine Island Road. As we've testified before, both the city officials as well as the county officials recognize the importance of increasing the capacity of both State Road 78 and Veterans Parkway. With regard to the hurricane evacuation questions, frankly, those are going to be addressed through things like sheltering requirements. Any residents that would be moving into this area will also be contributing to the county's All Hazards MSTU, which provides funding for sheltering impacts. At this stage, it really is premature to be able to say exactly what kind of impacts those might be. But the capacities of those roadways are going to be increasing in the future, and we'll do the best that we can. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. As we've testified before, we believe that at this stage, this is the last step in changing the zoning, and right now from county agricultural zoning to a consistent city zoning, and quarter commercial CC zoning is the only consistent zoning category that's available for this particular area. We believe that between the staff report and Mr. Dravlik's testimony, that it's demonstrated that it's both consistent with the comprehensive plan, meets all the requirements of the land development code, and that it ought to be changed to CC zoning. We urge you to recommend to the council to make that change.
I have two comments, well, a comment and a question. The first comment I'd like to make is I appreciate the fact that the applicant's representatives have apparently met with the neighbors. There have been several comments that alluded to that, and if you're familiar with this process and my interpretation of this process, you know I'm a real big fan of that happening, so I appreciate the applicant's representatives doing that. My second comment's really a question. I recognize that you've not been recognized as an expert, Mr. Hartzell, but if I can ask you a question based upon your knowledge and experience, which I'm very well aware is very extensive in the area of zoning. With Lee County having designated the church, apparently designated the church as an historic property, landmark property, I'm not sure how the county does that, or what they call it, I should say. Is it your opinion that that designation would continue under the City of Cape Coral jurisdiction?
I'm actually not sure whether that would continue under the City of Cape Coral jurisdiction. I'm not sure what the City of Cape Coral's historic preservation requirements are.
I thought it would track the zoning continuing as is unless the Cape were to, same philosophical perspective, but it's an interesting question.
It is. No, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
I bet our Assistant City Attorney is eager to weigh in on it.
I'm not aware, Your Honor, as well. I know they've submitted their intentions to maintain the historic nature, but as far as the city requirement to do so, I have not looked at that.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have no other questions. Any member of your team wish to comment on what I've just inquired of? Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Boyko, do you have any comment regarding public comment, testimony, or my inquiry of any type?
I have no further input.
Okay, and the historic designation is not something that...
Yeah, I mean, with City of Cape Coral doesn't have any historic preservation standards. I believe Lee County has their own process, board review things that go on. We did a little research when we found out that the church was historic a couple of weeks ago. We have a staff member who was, I believe, a part of that at one point in time, many years ago. And she kind of told us kind of what occurs there with Lee County and some of those historic designated buildings. The City of Cape Coral wouldn't do anything itself to change that status. I don't know if redevelopment of the church were to ever occur in the future. I mean, it's not proposed as part of this. I don't know if Lee County would still have jurisdiction over what could be done with it at that time, but that's probably something to cross at a later date. Hey, I mean, maybe in 5 years, Cape Coral will have its own historic preservation as the city gets older, but currently there's nothing in place with the city of Cape Coral for historical preservation.
Thank you. I know the Lee County process is extremely rigorous, and I have observed it in Matlacha specifically. So I would assume that the Cape's not going to do anything to disturb that. I just was curious if we had any testimony on that.
Yeah, I don't know how the statutory requirements of Lee County is, if their reach extends into Cape Coral once things are annexed into Cape Coral. It may, and you know, like I said, that's something that's a bridge we'll cross if it ever comes to that.
Okay, thank you. No other questions. All right. Mr. Assistant City Attorney, you're looking pensive. Did you have anything else you wanted to share with us, or no?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. I will take all the testimony today, all the materials. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Boyko. Was there any public emails or anything of that?
Not for this site, no.
Okay, thank you. I will take all the testimony that has been presented today, both from the public as well as the applicant's representatives and staff, all the materials that were provided prior to today, and I will carefully review all of that and issue my recommendation as quickly as possible. So I want to thank everyone for attending today. I especially want to thank the members of the public who came in today. As I said previously today, participation by the public is absolutely critical to this process, and I appreciate you taking time out of your busy days and schedules to attend. So with those comments, I'm closing the hearing number D for today and announce the date and time of the next hearings. Will be Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022, 9 a.m. here in Council Chambers. We stand adjourned at 11:05. Thank you, everyone.